I said, Brooke, if I gave you a lot of warning, like 3 months of warning or 6 months of warning about an order, what's the biggest order you could make? And she said, 5,000 scarves. And I was like, oh my God, I'm in business. If Brooke can make 5,000 scarves with a lot of warning, people who manufacture products, which most of our products are not handmade, they were almost all manufactured. They have cash constraint, but they'll have scale, enough scale.
Right.
And
Right.
I said, okay, this is go time. Tomorrow, let's go.
We have a very special guest. I'm so excited. Today, we're going to go deep into what it takes to move from the scrappy early phase of building real scale to making meaningful impact and driving leadership that lasts. If you're a founder or an operator, someone driving growth in that 1 to 20 million zone, and this is where grit can meet a new kind of muscle. And that's where what the show is about, the real stories behind the metrics and the mindset and the leadership behind the momentum. So today's guest, Jules Pieri, has a story that checks all of these boxes. I could probably spend the entire podcast talking about Jules. She has such breadth and depth in her experience. It's truly incredible. So I'm just going to touch on a few things here. She's trained as an industrial designer. She's worked in big brands and product for major names. Then she took a big leap and she co-founded the Grommet at such a great time, 2008, big recession.
That's right.
And just an incredible, unique, differentiating platform. It gave these independent makers a stage. It was way before we were ever talking about direct to consumer, and it really is truly a direct to consumer platform. Launched thousands of unique products. I have bought tons of stuff there. Great for yourself, great for gifts. I'm eyeing a couple things right now that are great for travel. And ultimately, she's was able to build a business that caught the attention of major national retailers. And besides that, she's written a national bestseller book. She's been a voice for creators. She's now an investor. And again, I don't want to spend the whole podcast going on and on, but I totally could.
But
So welcome to From Grit to Growth, Jules. It's so nice to have you.
Oh, Jennifer, I bow to you. Wow, that's amazing. I wish my mother could hear that.
Well, for sure she will. So tell us a little bit about your backstory, because I know that, and I was reading your LinkedIn, and I think there's entrepreneurs who are made and entrepreneurs who are born, and I'm wondering if you're the latter. You just popped right out, and you were.
Oh, I always said I was an entrepreneur by necessity, so it's a little bit between the two, maybe.
Okay.
I'll dial back a little bit since I did just mention my mother. I grew up on the wrong side of the tracks in Detroit. My dad was an auto worker. My mom initially was a bank teller and then a homemaker. Oldest of four, first person in my family to go to college. I literally lived next to railroad tracks, the freight train, and the Detroit Diesel Allison plant at the end of our street. And but I was that like little nerdy kid who loved school. And in ninth grade, I was slotted to go to the exam school in Detroit, public school. And a teacher told me about a really fine boarding school outside of the city where all the auto exec kids went. And long story short, I snuck behind my parents' back, applied, got a scholarship, and went to boarding school at 14 and kind of never looked back. It was a pivotal, life-changing moment to do that. And it's when I became an entrepreneur. So I wasn't born an entrepreneur. Having to face that terrifying experience of being undereducated and growing up in these high-powered classrooms every day with kids who had life. My big accomplishment this summer before I started was buying a Schwinn Varsity with all my babysitting money, a 10-speed bike. And the first launch, I'll never forget sitting down and hearing about African safaris and all these things, that had happened to these kids over the summer. But I had to face that fear of the unknown with a goal that was, maybe within reach, but seemed really hard at the time to get through this thing at a really young age. So I can talk more about that. That's something I think I've thought a lot about, like facing fear.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's so many questions I have for you. I guess if I can jump into the grommet a little bit, I'm going to maybe get to that first, if you don't mind. A time when online retail was dominated by big brands and Amazon, and they were just eating everything that they could and swallowing everybody up. What made you believe at that point? Like, what was one of those aha moments in starting the grommet to just say, you know what, there's room for this, and I'm going to make it happen?
Yeah. Great question, Mark. I guess the insight for it happened when I was working in a big company. I was working for a now famous person, Meg Whitman. She became Hewlett Packard's CEO, eBay's first CEO.
Right.
She ran for
What year
governor.
was that? Just, if you don't mind me
I was
interrupting.
working for her in the mid 90s, and
Okay.
she was president of Play School, a division of Hasbro.
Right.
So this is like the germ for Grommet, not when I did anything about it. But I'm working for this toy company. We are brilliant at R&D, producing wonderful toys for infants and toddlers. And I noticed our product line was shrinking very rapidly. Like in my short tenure there, in a couple of years, it was halved. And I asked Meg, what is going on here? I don't understand this. And she said, well, it's kind of simple. It's at the time, Kmart, Walmart, Toys R Us, we're taking over all toy distribution. And she said, we're losing the mom and pops, the regional, the latter to retail for new products was always those specialty stores and the smaller stores that took risks and tried new things. The big guys then and now just want last year's product with a twist and a better margin in retail. That's just their business model. It's not evil, just who they are. They don't take a lot of risks. And that kind of stuck with me. Like I thought it was inevitable. Like, that we just like the big will march through and munch away all innovation. And then fast forward to what was ultimately my second startup. I worked in 3 startups. I was president of a social network really early, like before anyone knew anything about, LinkedIn and Facebook. I was working for a competitor to LinkedIn as president. And so I was a pioneer in this industry. I have a good nose for what's next. You have to, as an industrial designer. You mentioned Jennifer, that's my real training as a designer. You have to see the future. And it's not because you're airy fairy, you just have kind of a discipline about it. And I saw that social media would matter, took the job. We didn't win. The company was sold, but had an outcome. But LinkedIn, nobody's on, my company is called Ziggs. Nobody's on Ziggs, everybody's on LinkedIn. But it gave me the tool set to build a community, and it made me understand how distribution would change digitally to social media really early. Like if I said those words to my friends, nobody would have known what I was talking about.
Right.
And so I said, okay, remember that Play School thing? Great products because of technology changes, the internet primarily, but 3D printing and other things. Great products are going to get born, like thousands of them, from people who have no business creating products because they have the tools. And you give creative people tools, they make things. So great products are going to be born. Meanwhile, this march through retail, including some of the things you said there, Mark, of being consolidated, continued. So it's going to be this explosion of products all dressed up with no place to go. That's going to be a shame. That shouldn't happen. And then there's going to be this platform. So it turned out to be a series of platforms to actually reach people that are not conventional routes. And I know how to build within that environment. So I started looking around though, because this is where I was kind of a reluctant entrepreneur. I'm always this way. If someone else is doing it well, I'm just going to cheer them on however I can. Work there, like I did with the social network, invest there as I do now, or just cheer them on. And I couldn't find anybody doing it. So it's like, damn it, I have to do this.
I guess I have to do it.
Yeah. I have to do this. So the real basics of the business that continues to be the norm for a long time were launch one product a day, source all over the world to find great undiscovered products. So examples of that, of the products we launched through the years would be Bombas socks, Bananagram, SodaStream, Fitbit, Uni Pizza Oven, Solo Stove, Simply Safe, lots and lots of tools and household gadgets, all kinds of things. And we looked at 300 a week to launch 5. And we told the story. This is you're going to think I'm nuts here when I make this claim, but we brought video to e-commerce. Nobody has had at the time introduced video to e-commerce. Why? Well, there were a couple of reasons. Big corporate companies were afraid of liability. Like, what? We're going to like make people talk about products and not just be like nameless, faceless people behind a picture. Like we're going to have individuals, so we did that with fearlessness because like we had nothing to lose. And then some of it was a technology story. It was a pain in the neck to do, frankly, at the time. Nobody had the iPhone, it was barely out. And so we just started telling video stories of each product, one a day. And these products had named like Fitbit. No one had heard of them. And we rigorously vetted them. So they were trustworthy. And we built a massive community. So basically within an hour of launch, after a few years, not right away, we moved markets. We knew immediately within 15 minutes of a launch at noon what America thought of any new product. And that created incredible influence for not just our platform, but more importantly for each maker who was suffering in obscurity normally. Nobody knew about them until we came along.
Let me follow up real quickly, if you don't mind, also that what was the aha moment? Because there's one thing to have the idea, then there's another to actually execute on it.
Yeah.
And tell us about that. How did you know this is going to work?
You don't. No one knows. And this was a little hard to vet. Like the maker side was easy to vet because I understood the collision of technology and creativity. I wasn't a genius to see that. Anyone could see that. What was harder to vet would be, would anyone care?
Yeah.
And I had to look for, and could we execute well, but I had confidence in that. It was an execution play, this business. And I had to look for the faintest signals, and they weren't that confidence building, I'll be honest. I had to rely on instinct. But the faintest signals were the explosion of two things. Farmers markets, where a lot of actually new products get born. They don't stay there. You can't scale with farmers markets, but physical products are often, the fun little side booths at a farmer's market. They were exploding like crazy. And independent bookstores were actually, in the face of Amazon, actually kind of growing. And I just thought there are little tiny, heartbeats there about and Etsy. Oh, Etsy was super important too. Yeah. That was a super early adopter of Etsy. I thought if you give people a voice and a face to these businesses and you give people a sense of participating in something that's independent, even a little rebel, that makes them smart, feel smart, and they are smart to know about these things, that could be really interesting. But in terms of my personal commitment, there's another thread that's okay. You might think it's a great business, but do you want to do it? That took a lot of soul searching. It was quick. I did it over maybe a month, but or a couple months. At first, I'm a designer, so I drew kind of a bubble chart of all the technological. There's literally a picture. I still have it. A bubble chart of all the technological and cultural trends that would fuel this business, like a increasing lack of trust of large institutions, disappointment, even in our government at the time over things like the Iraq War. I just knew small was going to be celebrated. And then things I mentioned earlier, like the internet and storytelling and social media. So that was my little bubble chart. And then the next day, because I'm Harvard MBA, first designer to go to Harvard, believe it or not, I did a spreadsheet and I was solving for one number, which was I want $100 million top line business. And I'm going to be really supply constrained with these tiny cash constrained suppliers. Even a company like Fitbit is cash constrained in the beginning. And so if I solve for, and I'm a little geeky, but like if I solve for like the world's most like unscalable business, like how many units could they produce and can I get to $100 million on the assumptions I make about how we launch these products and how many sell, that could be a business. So here's what I did. I went to this kind of like a holiday fair at MIT. I live near MIT. And I found the most unscalable business there. Her name was Brooke Stanton, and she made these very, very laborious scarves, like fashion scarves, in a vat in her basement. They were double dyed and took forever. And I said, Brooke, if I gave you a lot of warning, like 3 months of warning or 6 months of warning about an order, what's the biggest order you could make? And she said, 5,000 scarves. And I was like, oh my God, I'm in business. If Brooke can make 5,000 scarves with a lot of warning, people who manufacture products, which most of our products were not handmade, they were almost all manufactured. They're cash constrained, but they'll have scale, enough scale.
Right.
And I said, okay, this is go time tomorrow. Let's go.
So you've got all these plans, you've got everything laid out, you're, ready to rock and roll. You launch the Grommet. What in the first couple years what were some of the big learnings? What were some of those bumps in the road that you didn't quite expect, and how'd you get through those?
I think, our biggest bump was capital constraint. A lot of businesses will say that, but honestly, the biggest roadblock in a lot of businesses are competitive challenges or employee breakdowns situations. There are a lot of things that could take you down. Ours were, you alluded to it. We launched the week Lehman Brothers collapsed. And I was literally on stage at a venture forum in New York when this happened. And it was almost like you could just see the mood change. It was like the air went from like bright yellow to black, in the auditorium. I didn't fully understand what was happening. I had more experienced entrepreneurs tell me to put the business on ice. That this is always hard, but it's going to get a lot harder. So just knowing myself, I'm not sure I could really do what I'm about to say, but I probably would have listened to that. Like wait it out a year or two, because even really wealthy people who might be angels and investors, when their very large portfolio becomes 60% of what it used to be, they feel poor and they're not looking for expansive new ideas. They're kind of doubling down, supporting the commitments they've already made, especially institutional investors are in that mode. I did not understand all of that. I was like, you wimps, you're going to sit it out. Are you kidding me? This is the best time to go and nobody else is. So I did. Right. But I probably wouldn't do that. I think the other thing is, I was just counseling an entrepreneur. I do a lot of mentoring. I'm an executive fellow at Harvard Business School. I deal with a lot of startup teams there, as well as an investor. And this person was dealing with basically terminating some very important key early employees. And it kind of was a snowball of 3 at once, overdue. And I had to do something similar in the very first months of the business. We were 3 co-founders, and I had to let go one of my co-founders in the day of launch. And here's the thing I learned, like every time you did these kind of really milestone things as a CEO and a founder, the very first one about threatens to fell you, like you're up all night, and you should worry about a termination of anybody. It's their life you're affecting. But there were many things like that, a lawsuit or, challenges from competitors or investment that dries up. The first time all of those happen, you just are fit to be tied. And I'm a pretty calm person. Like I'm pretty steady, but I still would like sort of freak out like anyone would the first time. And then I learned to trust myself. Like, oh, I did that one and I did that one and I did that one. So the next one, whether it's a new monster or just the same monster again, I learned to trust. And part of that is it takes a while before you give yourself the CEO title. The world gives it to you a lot faster by necessity, but also just recognition. Like I'll never forget going to my first tech conference, put my name and CEO of the Grommet on my name tag, almost like feeling an imposter, like, God, who's going to laugh at me? And goes, oh, you're CEO of this business. Great. Like immediately these very, very famous people like Moore's Law guy, Bob Moore was there. The guy invented Moore's Law is there saying, oh, you're the CEO of the Grommet? Great. So, but it takes a while before you actually occupy the shoes fully and fully trust yourself in those shoes.
Yeah, there's an aura around that you were constantly probably chasing and feeling like, "I don't deserve this," but, you're the one who actually started it, made it happen. You focused on partnership or with the woman who made the scarves, for instance, and that's how you built a business, and then you partnered with, Ace Hardware, was it? And
Yep.
so, tell me, a lot of founders face that, where they're in their comfort zone, and then a big monster comes, and they kinda go, "Should I do this or should I not do this?"
Yeah.
How do you evaluate that, and how did you make sure that you didn't lose the spirit of what the grommet was all about?
Well, I had to face that twice, Mark, because the first time was a global company in Tokyo, Rakuten, bought a majority stake of the business. And oh my God, that was way scarier than Ace Hardware, right? I had never been to Tokyo. I knew nothing about Japanese culture. It was a fellow HBS grad who had invented essentially the Amazon of Japan and really understood the distinction of our business and its opportunity. So I understood that the CEO had an affinity for the business, but what about the rest of the place? They could eat us alive, and I didn't know what the cultural clashes would be. That relationship actually was much easier than I ever expected, because as a investor, they were completely hands off and respectful, and we did not have any strategic integration. So it essentially was like a financial investor with a lot of sort of information sharing, right? So, okay, all
Right,
those words I just said, I wouldn't have understood before I did it all.
right,
Just like, oh, we got lucky on that one. These are really great people, super honorable, who really just want us to do well. And we soared under that
right.
investment structure. ACE was a much trickier thing. That your question matters a lot in the ACE situation because I was speaking at a conference and a woman from Ace Harbor came running over to me. Oh my God, we need you. We compete with Home Depot and Lowe's. We're 5,500 independently owned stores in a co-op structure. And one of the ways we compete against those big guys is having differentiated product. That's all you guys do all day. And we have a lot of tools and household gadget type products. Um, and a lot of Ace Hardware stores have great housewares. So she came over and said, could we distribute your products? What could we do here? That's how
Yeah,
the project started. And it was a
okay,
project. And this is a good way to start. Like you're not saying, oh, please buy my company or please
right,
invest in my company. You're saying, let's see how we do together. So it was very laborious and hard to do, but we pulled off a 250 store pilot where
yeah,
we had branded displays. Remember, our products come from different brands. They're not Grommet brand,
right,
but people like Jennifer would know if they walked in the store, whoa, what's this Grommet display? Anything in this display has been vetted and tested and is worthy. So that was a super powerful test in the Ace stores. It was a completely opposite. It was Jennifer coming in who spent a lot more than the average Ace customer was coming in for something small and functional typically. She was coming in and saying, well, I'm looking around this Ace in a different way. Trust Grommet. And she spent more different profile entirely. So really good for the Ace business, really good for us.
smart.
But, but ultimately, Rakuten sold their share to Ace Hardware, and then the hard stuff started, Mark,
Yeah,
because it's really fun to be the bright and shiny object of this really successful pilot. But then you need 5,500 stores to care, and these are individually owned stores. And I had a bit of an ignorant perspective there because I'd worked in retail and I understood like in a corporate owned retail store, you send out a planogram and a merchandising plan, and 5,500 stores just do it. They have the tools, they're required to. The store manager just does it. You know what? A co op is like, it's herding cats. Like these are people using their own capital. They're the salt of the earth, wonderful small business people who may or may not buy into this whole
right,
program. And
yeah,
ACE is not going to force it on them. They respect their independence. So we had to build an expensive, essentially outreach machine, kind of a sales function that we never had. We were a digital business.
right,
I was allergic to this effort. not because I didn't want to do it or didn't think it was worth it, but it was an investment in a speculative outcome, right? Like digital ads or digital platforms, in seconds if something's working. Investing in things like trade shows and a team that would, individually
Right.
help merchants in the stores curate their assortments and convince them to buy displays. They didn't supply these displays. Really hard.
Yeah.
So probably I would have not relied on the test so much. It's weird. I wouldn't have relied on my own experience as I would have asked other external parties who had to get programs into ACE, how did it go? Because what made it work and which ones failed? Did not do that homework. So it was a lot harder and a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
And was really hard on the company because we went from a break even, just getting profitable, super high growth company to one that was investing heavily in something that wasn't yet paying off. So we started losing money, which was very unhappy for everybody.
Right.
So I would say I did hurt the company by not understanding what I was getting into. And that's my job as CEO, to understand these things. And also maybe, kind of believing some excitement and commitments would really last. And corporate entities get distracted. They don't stay on programs very long, but we had to stay on the program.
Yeah. So I saw a post, one of your posts on LinkedIn. I think it was last week. You were talking about how it feels like now with the Grommet, you saw a picture of, I'm assuming, a bunch of employees that they're all grown up, and now the Grommet is inviting you over for Thanksgiving, right? The kids
employees
for Thanksgiving. Which I thought was just an excellent analogy. You've seen it as a baby, you chased it in teenager land, and now they're inviting you over for Thanksgiving. So what are your where are you at now with the Grommet? How do you still engage with them, and just where's your head at?
It's entirely where you just said, Jennifer. It's with the employees who obviously are mostly not there. The company was spun out from Ace Hardware, operates under a whole different ownership now, and I'm not involved with the actual operations of the business. And but I am very deeply involved when asked, when needed, with the alums, of which there are hundreds. And we had a great Grommet reunion at my own place last year, and that's kind of where this harkened back. Like I did play, the parent to host everybody. My co-founder and I did that last year, but I was really tickled to see them lay down a date next year. We're all getting together and they're hosting. And so it's mostly on the career level. I mean, some of it is like they have babies and I go see the babies or things like that. Some of it's personal. I enjoy the personal relationships, but it's mostly career, trying to deploy my network my number one asset in my whole professional life is my network. And I tried to teach this group of employees about how important that was and that they themselves would be their own best network. And they are, but I'm part of that. So I try to help with the folks I know, helping them.
What was the employee size or revenue size when you sold this business?
65 million, about just over 100, maybe 120 employees.
Okay.
So you're talking to an audience. We're talking to an audience at 0 to 20. I think that's like the super perilous and super fun stage of a business. Then there's another like super perilous phase that is, closer to 100 million. Frankly, that like 50 to 100 is really hard. Maybe less perilous. That 0 to 20 is really perilous. But gosh, it's so fun to like be in a total rugby scrum quite often, around decisions. That's the really early stage where like it's sort of a flat organization and you're forming it out of nothing and it's an amoeba. Everybody gets a vote. That can't last long. It's not efficient at all, but it's super fun.
But it's fun.
Yeah.
I was having coffee with a guy the other day. He had an idea for a business. He goes, but I've wanted to do this my whole life, but I'm 46 years old and I think I've missed the window. I'm too old. And you started the Grommet, I would say, pretty much later in your own career. How would you counsel someone like that?
Bring out the stats. The most statistically most successful age to start a business is 45. So it's for a couple of probably fairly obvious reasons, but when you're in it, you might not see them. It's that you do have that network of people and resources that you can draw on. That hopefully over the course of whatever career you've built a reputation that people want to help you and they know what you're made of. You don't have that when you're 25. You're completely
Right.
unproven quantity, and you know hardly anyone. So that's number one. Number two would be, I think you have an operating playbook of how you, especially how you deal with people or partnerships. No matter what you've done, you've probably not been isolated, especially if you're leaning towards entrepreneurship. So you
Yeah.
kind of know how you do things, and you don't have to make those decisions for the first time. You're much faster at decision making. So I think it makes a very powerful package. The holdback is maybe what your mentee was experiencing is what two things. One is like, if I haven't done it yet, do I have what it takes? Like you haven't proven it. And you see a lot of press around 25-year-old entrepreneurs, not 45-year-old
Right.
entrepreneurs. So
Right.
the media doesn't necessarily help. And two would be you've got a lot of overhead in your life, and a lot of people have just not managed to keep the burn low to preserve that opportunity. So that's a big part of the advice I give people. Like, let's say at 30, you're not sure you want to do this, but you want to preserve the opportunity. Don't be keeping up with the Joneses. Keep the house smaller than it needs to be. Keep
Yeah.
the vacations modest. Just keep the burn down so that whether you do it or not, you'll have that capital and that freedom that you might have blocked yourself out of
Yeah.
later. Obviously, if you're partnered, that can be a super helpful thing too. You might get opportunity because of your spouse's career, but not everybody has that. You might be
Right.
married to, the world's best kindergarten teacher who's
Right.
doing God's work, but
I
isn't going
am.
to.
You
You
are.
are. Okay.
Yeah.
You are? Really?
Yeah. I ask her every day when she goes to work. I say, "What's this going to cost me today?" But she well, she loves it. Passionate. Yeah.
Didn't matter. Sorry, whatever you and I do, her work probably is double the impact. It just
Totally.
matters
Totally.
so much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so true. Well, and you're going to kill me for saying this, Mark, but hell, your most successful venture was probably when you were around 45-ish,
50,
40-ish.
51. I started it.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right.
So
Yeah, yeah. Well, there you go.
Use your own experience, right? You put yourself back in those shoes and remember, what you did bring to the party. It was a heck of a lot.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The playbook is a really good point too, is you get all that experience, you hone, you smarten, you optimize that playbook, and you are just you have a way better chance of creating a very successful venture.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now you do advise founders, right? So
Yep.
tell us a little bit about that.
I do it in three capacities. One is at this work at Harvard Business School, and then I also teach at BU. So I'll run into founders formally through Harvard as an executive fellow, and BU as an adjunct faculty member. Two, I'm an investor in an early stage fund, and the advice there comes in two threads. One is when someone's pitching me. That's the larger number of people. And two is post investment. And that's probably my more preferred route for advising people because when I invest in the third route I'll just mention is like just being out and about. People find me. I just had a call before this call with an entrepreneur I'd met because I was on a panel for a startup week in Boston. So strangers, who just are intrepid and find me because I'm, out there somewhere. And the ones I enjoy most probably are the longer term relationships because when I invest in companies, I would say only about a third of the portfolio CEOs I invest in really want that relationship from me. They have other people who are providing that. It's not necessarily me, but I'm kind of a safe harbor for them because our fund is a small investment in the company. And so you can kind of tell me the truth because I'm not going to do a follow-on check. It's not our model. Whereas your larger investors, there's a bit of a showmanship always with them because you're trying to get that next check from them. Whereas I can help them game how to get the next check or tell them they should go for the next check or whatever it is. It's not all about capital, where I'm a safe harbor. And I really enjoy those relationships. And life becomes entwined with a startup as well. And so I'll get to know the fuller picture of the person's life and what their needs and wants and opportunities are that might be informed somewhat by their personal life. It might be geography. I have an entrepreneur who kind of has pushed the company all over the world, like living in different places because of family circumstances. Well, that kind of matters, like who I can, help her partner with, depending on if she's living in Europe or US and things like that. So I enjoy those. And, but I will say this, I don't enjoy telling the same stories over and over. So when I find myself repeating myself, I like kind of check it a little bit. And that's just me. Like they're kind of tried and true lessons. Like they're not wrong just because I said it before. But maybe it's an entrepreneurial mindset. Like I like doing new. And so if I feel like a little bit like I'm looking back too much, I don't enjoy that part of mentoring.
Fascinating to me is that you have a design background and not a traditional, Stanford, Wharton finance background. Do you think that gave you an advantage when it came to building something that kind of just used both intuition, which I think some designers have a lot of, as well as data?
Yeah, more the intuition side. The data side came just from kind of a pretty evenly right brain, left brain person.
Yeah.
And some of my training at HBS too, but it was innate that I enjoyed that side of life, the quantitative side. But yeah, the designer thing, I mean, here's the deal with the design project of any sort, you're being paid, challenged to see the future, like try to anticipate the intersection of competition and, usually in a company, obviously. So the competition, the customer, and the capabilities of that company, nobody's paying you to design today or tomorrow, just like day after tomorrow. It's the future. And that's a discipline that you develop as a designer that's super helpful to company formation. It's no different than trying to see company opportunity. And then the second thing that's probably equally important is the comfort in filling that blank space. And like way back in design school, I designed what to my eyes was the very first portable computer, like a laptop. I'd never seen one, and I designed one in school. And if you're designing a product, you're trying to keep like different balls in the air all at once, advancing them unevenly, like trying to think out the power supply versus the screen versus the software versus the hardware. And a company's kind of like that. Like I can't be good at everything in this company. 16 things need to happen at once. I've got to advance them as I can and kind of get comfortable with that ambiguity and that compromise as a designer while you're developing a product. You can't be great at it all at every minute of the development cycle. And you have to be dependent on other people with the disciplines you don't understand. And so as a CEO, half of what you're leading, you don't even understand. I could not do the job, right? How could you possibly have had a career, say at age 45, where you've done everything that needs to happen underneath you? Not possible. Designers have to work with people in that kind of way too, where they have to respect and understand, get the best out of people, even if it's not their own expertise.
Yeah. I love the fact that you brought up ambiguity because dealing with ambiguity is such a superpower for the most successful entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
When it comes to some advice you might give to your founders or to our listeners who are early stage direct to consumer founders or trying to make that leap from corporate career to entrepreneurialism, what kind of advice would you give them off the start with just the ambiguity of not knowing everything that they're trying to do?
It's maybe broader than startup advice, but it applies to startups. One is, I'll never forget my brother who loves me when I was starting the Grommet said, "What will you do if it fails?" And I think he was secretly thinking when it fails, because it sounded like a dumb idea. And, and I said to him, this is the advice part. Well, I won't be blackballed from professional life. I'll just go get a job. And I think, like, what's the worst thing that can happen? I do this in all hard decisions. What's the worst thing that can happen? Let me live in that horrible space of the worst thing. Okay, my startup fails. Does the whole world decide I'm unemployable?
Right.
You put some boundaries in so I don't lose my house and I don't sacrifice my kids' future. You don't go to that extreme, but put the boundaries in, and then, like, what's the worst can happen? So think of it that way. Most of the world will think, go you, after a year or two of effort and a failure. You tried, but most people won't try. Certainly any startup person is going to tell you that. But I think even corporate people will say, good for you. Like, you tried it.
Right.
So that's the worst that can happen. Okay, I can live with that. And then the other thing is, this is maybe a little more life than in business, but I find, like, if you think back up to the future of the tombstone, like your death, the people with the most regrets are the people who haven't done something, who like wish
Yeah.
they'd done something. It's rarely that you did something and it didn't work out, you regret it. It's almost always, oh, I missed that chance, I didn't do it. And what stops people, I think, is there's a legitimate fear of that thing that you're going to do, the ambiguity, the unknown. And most people, there's kind of a physiological response. Like, in my case, it'd be my stomach. My stomach churns when something's worrying me. But some people overeat, some people can't sleep, some people get sweats, headaches. I think we all kind of have a physical tell, or we know, like, when we're feeling that anxiety over a hard thing. And the people who can't get through it, like, who don't recognize it as, this is my friend. My upset stomach's my friend. It's telling me this thing is hard and I probably just need to push through it. And it comes back to something you said earlier, Jennifer. You push through those things. Like I told you, I did it as a 14-year-old. I have to go to Algebra 2 every day, even though I've just realized I never had Algebra 1 in my Detroit public school. Every day I have to face this crappy experience of learning both at once. Oh, right. I just developed a confidence muscle. It's a
Yeah.
confidence muscle of walking. I think it was like this scary cloud I have to walk through. I get to the other side. I didn't die. Nothing bad happened. I got through it. And that confidence muscle, which was this tiny little twig of a few fibers when I was 14, gets thicker and thicker and thicker because you walk through, walk through. Whether you succeed or not, you got through it. And
Yeah.
that's the thing I try to solve for to this day when I don't want to do something. I've got a big project in front of me right now where I'm trying to convince the city of Boston to let me develop a parcel of land on the waterfront for public benefit. I had no business doing this. I don't know the first thing about real estate development. I got scraps of paper around me on my desk of the people I'm going to talk to make me smart, just like Steve Jobs would do. He didn't know what he's doing either. He just figured out who didn't know what he needed to know. And I know Steve Jobs, not making that comparison, but it's the entrepreneur's playbook to, like, recognize what I don't know, go figure out who knows it, and then develop the credibility because I've done all this hard work to put all these things together that nobody else has figured out how to do because I'm motivated to do it.
It's just such great advice, and just stepping off the curb, not the cliff, but just step off the curb and get going.
Ooh,
You know,
can I steal that?
you
It's
can,
not
you can,
the curve. How bad can
yes.
it be?
How bad can it be? It's like, just go
He's got
back.
a lot of good ones like that.
I
Just
love that. All right, keep talking. I don't even want to hear from you.
I guess one thing, and I always think about this a lot, but because I don't have the answer, so I always ask smart people what they think. But what's one thing you wish you would have known right out of the gate when you started this? You realize now you have the benefit of hindsight, but what is it you look back and say, God, I wish I would have known that before I started this company or anything for that matter?
I love this thing that I've heard recently, that first-time entrepreneurs think all about the product.
Yeah.
They obsess over it. Second-time entrepreneurs think all about the business model, and that usually means distribution and margins. Can I make money, and how am I going to find customers? As an investor, I just intuitively go there, like, yeah, product. I love product. I'm an industrial designer. I could spend all day there, but I need to make sure we're going to be successful here with business model distribution. I didn't understand that. Like, don't be bamboozled by somebody with a Harvard MBA. They're not entrepreneurs because they get a business in any MBA. Forget the name of this school. An MBA is not that. It's like life that teaches you in business, that teaches you the importance of being able to make money, reach customers, cash flow. It's like the real life thing of like meeting payroll, but mostly like, is this business going to be able to make money? Even if the product is the best thing ever, but you can't make money, like, okay, it's a project, but it's not business.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, we could spend all day with you, Jules, but I know that you got to get out there in the world and make more impact than just being on this podcast. So
change the waterfront.
Yeah, change the waterfront. Yeah, you heard it here first. I'm either going to be in 2 months totally rejected, not having been able to do it, or I'm like scared going hard.
That's probably where you're at.
Probably.
So thank you so much. And if you guys learn something new, go to the Grommet for sure and take a look at all the cool and inventive products they've got. Just really neat selection of products. Look more up in regards to Jules. She is just amazing, and definitely get her book.
Definitely.
Sure. So thank you so much, Jules, and subscribe and give us reviews on From Grit to Growth. We can't wait to hear from you.
Yeah.
Thanks
Thanks
guys.
everybody.